For the past couple of months, I've worked non-stop on creating this game. And it's actually pretty amazing how much better it's become as a result. Because we went from having this random mess of a project to an actual playable experience with cool guns and enemies and a boss. And yeah, all of that is pretty cool. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, because every game dev journey starts somewhere. And this one started out pretty generic. With the capsule beam. You see, I had challenged myself to make a game in an hour, using as little pre-made assets as I could. So, I quickly decided on making a very simple wave shooter, and began a crucial next 1 hour of my life. After messing around with cosmetics for the capsule for way too much time, since this was a shooter, the next step was to add a gun. Now I could have simply downloaded a much better looking gun model from Sketchfab or something, but I had already set some really strict rules against as little pre-made assets as I could. So we were stuck with this absolute train wreck of a gun. It's a pretty good gun, made with love by yours truly. It works most of the time. And now the next step, you see, is actually a pretty standard procedure around these parts. No one actually makes base FPS code anymore. Using as little pre-made assets as I could. Yeah. I also had to add in a shoot function, which I definitely wrote myself, because that didn't come with the documentation, and I'm pretty bad at code, so there were definitely some issues with the shooting. Okay, so it took a while to figure that out, but with about 20 minutes left and no time to test, I had to make a couple of compromises and still somehow work on the enemies, the wave system, and the environment. It was all a lot. And slowly, the time ticked to 0. And all I had at the end of this was this really buggy mess of a game. I spent a few more hours looking at the project and hating the end product. I'd already began questioning if game dev was a thing that I could do at all. I mean, this compared to the much cooler 1 hour game dev projects on YouTube was absolute trash. But then I thought, of course it was going to be trash. I mean, I spent only an hour on this thing. That's like less than a day, so why wouldn't it be trash? I wonder how it'll look like if I spent like a whole day working on this thing. And there, progress. I mean, it's not much, but it's honest work and I'll take it. That is better than what we had. Sort of. But you know what's bigger than 1 day? 1 month. What if I spent a whole month working on this exact same project, trying to make it the most fun experience it could possibly be while maintaining the core game mechanic that is just shooting enemies? Should be pretty simple. So, after the first month, the game is starting to look a lot more like what we saw in the intro, and that's because most of the gameplay was developed in the first month. For some reason, building newer mechanics is harder when the project is bigger because you have to make it compatible with everything that existed before, and so going through the first month was a breeze. Starting out, all we had was the gun, the player, and an enemy spawning system. So now we have multiple enemies and multiple guns. So yeah, the game definitely became a lot more exciting. Now you probably have already noticed, but the enemies don't exactly deal much damage to the player, and so their best bet is to just knock you off the game because they do crazy knockback, and you can now use the guns to kind of nudge yourself around because they also do crazy good knockback. Speaking of guns, we've got the pistol, just 2 rectangles baby, the SMG gun, the shotgun gun, a rifle gun, and finally the rocket launcher gun. So we've got all these guns, but the gameplay is such that you still need to unlock them by killing enemies really fast. Kinda like the combo system in Boxhead. So yeah, it's unlocked and then you still kinda need to get them from fancy supply boxes that drop when you kill enemies. Anyway, this definitely was a lot better and more fun than the 1 hour thing, because now we've got guns. The game looks better. At this point I was super confident in the game and I decided to release it on itch.io. Only to get my hopes absolutely crushed and get 0 downloads. Which I thought would be fine, but for some reason it was actually pretty soul crushing. And I was just not interested in working on the project anymore. I had kind of ended up in the exact same place I was when I made the first 1 hour game. Suddenly all the things that were wrong with the game kind of stood out a lot more. It was all highlighted and I couldn't even find what made me think the game was fun anymore. The next month I made really slow progress, and I guess I actually did stop working on it, so the intro wasn't exactly true and I didn't work non-stop. One of the things that looked wrong with the last build was the default Godot texture, and in one of my lowest moments I actually turned to AI generated art and textures to pretty much solve all my problems. I even tried AI music. But that didn't end up getting into the game. I also happened to run into some serious performance issues around this time, and lack of motivation coupled with performance issues which are just the absolute worst in game dev. But then the next month, something really cool happened. So, fast forward to a few weeks ago and I had already started a new project. Moved on to the next cool thing. But for some reason, by chance, I accidentally opened this game again. At first, I told myself I'll only try to fix a few issues. Ended up breaking the codebase, so that took the entire day to fix. But afterwards, I was hooked. Once again, it was about time to resume the project. This time, I decided to pay attention to something I've neglected for far too long in my games. You see, in my other games, I'm usually a lot more focused on the engineering behind the mechanics and how I wanted to use the new cool thing I learned, rather than how the game would actually feel for the players. So yeah, like I said, we're gonna try to make the simple mechanic of just shooting enemies as fun as we can. And so the past few weeks have really been spent on adding things like communicating to the player when the enemies are attacking, using these fancy trails add-on I downloaded from the asset library, an auto aim feature for the hit scan weapons, because it's really annoying to have a gun that shoots really fast but it doesn't actually shoot anything. I mean, either that or I'm just bad at FPS games. Probably the latter. And adding more enemy types because variety. I also added this guy who was supposed to be a boss that would absolutely decimate players. I also spent time adding fancy main menu animations, and as you probably can imagine, animated menus a lot more fun than static ones. Behind the scenes, I also did some performance optimizations, like making a distance-based priority queue for slightly complex calculations and limiting the maximum number of enemies on screen for smoother gameplay. You know, ultimately, smooth gameplay is pretty much impossible for me, because it seems no matter what I do, my laptop is still a friggin' potato. The game still plays out very choppy and it's terrible. But I'm curious to see how the game runs for you guys. I'm curious to see what you guys think of it. So yeah. There it is. The current build of this game is available for free on itch.io. So yeah, be sure to check that out if you want to help me with feedback, because I really want to make the game fun, and that's only possible with feedback. I already have a couple of plans on what to do next, so yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more of this stuff, and thank you. Ultimately, I've learned that stuff just takes time, and if you're willing to stick around, it will be a fun ride. Looking at where it was at 1 hour and where it is at 3 months, yeah, it will be a fun ride eventually, and that's just game dev. So thank you for watching this far, and if you're a game developer and you're not too confident in your game, or you're doubting your abilities at any point, one solution I found is to just continue working on it, because eventually, if you work on it, the game will be better and you will be a lot more proud of your work because you worked hard on it for a lot of time. So yeah, there's my 2 cents. If you're still watching, why are you still watching? Anyway, don't forget to smash subscribe. See you in the next one. in like 5 months or something.